Hello, thank you all, and welcome to this session on Is Cloud-Based PPM Right for Your Business? And this will be a panel discussion with three of our CA PPM SaaS customers. We have MGM and Heineken and Time Warner Cable. And this will be a panel discussion about the benefits that these customers have realized by moving or choosing to go to SaaS. And we know that we actually have a lot of content to cover in 30 minutes. So one of the first things I wanted to say to you all is we probably won't have time for Q&A at the end of the session, but we actually expect this to be a session where you may have a lot of questions about it. So please use the mobile app for Q&A. And if you're not familiar with how that works, go to your menu on the CA World app, go to interactive sessions, and then choose this session and participate. And from there, submit your questions. All of the speakers will gather by the side of the stage when we're done, so they can answer some questions afterwards as well. But we really do want to get all of your questions about this important topic, and then everyone will get a chance, will respond by email over the next day or two. So with that, I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers. So this is Amervis Lopez Cobb from MGM, and Johanna Din from Heineken, and Reid from Time Warner Cable. And from here, I will allow them to introduce themselves. So go ahead, Amervis.
So my name is Amervis Lopez Cobb. I work for MGM Resorts International. Back in 2006, I had the honor of having MGM Resorts International relocate me from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, to implement their first PMO, IT PMO, in conjunction with Clarity. And I was very excited and thrilled to be able to do that. And CA was actually a product that CA's Clarity is the product that I've been using for over 10 years. Back in 2004, right before Computer Associates purchased it, I was using it as NICU ABT, for those of you that are familiar with the product. So I've grown with Clarity, and I'm definitely a system advocate and longtime user. And in 2006, when MGM Resorts International relocated me from Philadelphia, we rolled out the full gamut of Clarity, time tracking, resource management, project management, to about 1,000 users, both internal labor employees and also professional services T&M contractors. And at that time, the economy was doing very well. We had a $95 million capital projects portfolio. And as a lot of the companies have experienced throughout the years following that, in 2009, 2010, we experienced a recession, and we had to reevaluate our environment, our PMO, and our usage of Clarity in the context of the current environmental factors. And as a result, we replaced the on-premise legacy system with the on-demand, and we are now on Clarity. Actually, CA PPM is what we're calling it now, SaaS version 13.3. And I'm excited to share the stage here today with global leaders here, powerhouse, technology and media powerhouse, Time Warner Cable, and Heineken, the makers of my father-in-law's favorite beer.
Okay, so with that, Johanna, we'll hear from you about Heineken.
So my name is Johanna Din. I live in the Netherlands, and the headquarters of Heineken in Amsterdam. Work for Heineken, and Heineken has been using Clarity at the headquarters only for 3 years, and only within the global information services, and that's where I work in the PMO. And actually been in the PMO within Heineken for 8 years, and I'm now the integrated portfolio manager. Our story with Clarity started more in an operating company in the UK in 2006, so it was very localized usage. And we decided at the headquarters that we needed to really professionalize our portfolio management. And in 2011, we actually had an on-premise solution. And we, for reasons of wanted to grow, define a roadmap, we had a new CIO to really enable us to go where we want to go and have a scalable solution. We decided actually it makes sense to move to on a SaaS solution. We migrated in July, and we are now under version 13.2. And our user base is increasing every month because we started a global rollout. So we are increasing on a regular basis, and we expect to have a global usage by 2017.
Okay, thank you, Johanna. And next we'll hear from Bryan about Time Warner Cable.
Sure. So Time Warner Cable is a company that operates in 29 states in the United States. We have about 50,000 employees. And we started our journey with Clarity as a PPM solution about 4.5 years ago. At that time, my personal history goes all the way back to 751, 753. For those of you that are longer users of Clarity, I understand what that journey has looked like. But when we were looking for not only the best solution to implement on the PPM space, but also what environment we wanted to deploy that on demand was the right choice at the right time for us. We started on 12.06 at Time Warner Cable, and we're now currently on 13.2. Looking to go to 14.2. I'm sure a lot of you have attended the sessions that we have and seen some of the neat features and reporting capabilities that 14.2 is going to offer. So that's our plan somewhere in the late part of Q1 of 15. So our journey from the time we contracted to standing up our on-demand solution was about a 6-month journey to do our configuration, get the application to look and feel the way that we needed to, and to architect it in the way it needed to be successful within our company. We have about 1,200 users, active users within the system, and we have about 7 different PMOs within Time Warner Cable that we accommodate through a partitioning model. So 1 instance, but 7 partitions, so that we can have that targeted or tailored experience for each one of those PMOs. We also do not have an enterprise PMO, which is a challenge when you're trying to deploy stuff or trying to have consistency. But it's something that we've been able to leverage the tool and still be accommodative to our end users.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a number of different topics that are important to these customers we think will be important to you about considering SaaS. And we're going to start first with objectives. So Amervis, could you go first?
So as I alluded to earlier, we were experiencing the impacts of the recession. We had to evaluate the need to reduce overhead, reduce costs, and also, unfortunately, we had some downsizing. So we had to look at reducing FTEs, not just full-time FTEs, but half-time FTEs that maybe would have been doing some support on the technical side. We also had to look at decapitalizing our purchase model, and we looked at those things on a short term, but we also in the back of our mind kept staying up to date with the latest releases and possibly maybe leveraging some of the features and functionalities of the new releases to be able to transform our people, process, and technology plan, which was something that was more on the long-term objectives perspective at that time.
Go ahead, Johanna.
First, we had really 3 drivers to move to a SaaS solution. The first one, as I mentioned, we had now a new CIO with a roadmap that we detailed to go to 2017 to have a global rollout to all our operating companies globally. So we needed a solution that enabled us in our roadmap and a solution that is scalable. We didn't have yet the timings about when we're going to roll out and to which opco, so we needed really a scalable solution that supported us in that roadmap. Another driver was we wanted to review some of our processes and make sure they are lean, as much as possible, best practice. And in here, going to a SaaS solution, trying to leverage as much as possible the out-of-the-box functionalities, the inherent best practices, was really a good driver for us to bring the change in the processes. And the third driver was really, we had an on-premise solution, but it was only scaled for 150 users. We had to make an investment to grow and to enable us in the roadmap. So in any case, we had to spend money, do something. Also, we had an issue with performance on an on-premise, on the on-premise solution. So for us to move on a SaaS solution, really responded to our infrastructure need. We didn't need to worry about it. The technology and technical knowledge is with CA. Performance issues is with CA. We don't need to worry about it. And we can really focus on the functional aspects and our own processes.
Bryan?
Yeah. For Time Warner Cable, our objectives for a PPM solution were fairly simple, which goes along well with our corporate mantra of being simple and easy. We needed something that was going to scale, just like Johanna mentioned for Heineken. We knew in the absence of an enterprise PMO in our company, we were going to have to grow organically with our PPM solution. So we needed to be able to have an enterprise solution that could grow alongside the business as we increased end user adoption. But we needed the whole thing to work, even if we only wanted to use parts of it, right? It's parts of functionality. Maybe we were going to use resource management in one PMO, but not in another. So we had to scale, not just in the usage and performance aspect of scale, but also in the functionality. So that was our first tenet, was we had to go through and have something that would scale alongside us. Secondly, we had to make sure that we could increase end user adoption. As many of you probably are facing, there were several tools that existed within our company, and we needed to increase that end user adoption by consolidating those tools into Clarity as a PPM solution. But we had to convince and prove and earn that trust and value in doing that. But increasing end user adoption was absolutely something that was important for us. We also had to make sure that if our customers, meaning our project managers, managers of project teams, whatever the case may be, if they were going to invest that time and effort into a tool, we had to be able to commit to them that we were going to get that information back out of Clarity, right? So it wasn't invest in the PPM tool and do this PowerPoint deck over here and this, so you also have to do the spreadsheet over there. So getting that information back out and knowing that we can do that from the administrative side with confidence was paramount for us. And so that was something we had to do. And then finally, having a tailored experience for each one of our business units was something we felt would add a lot of value. The way our residential customer base or business unit operates versus our commercial business unit isn't exactly the same. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So we leveraged a partition architecture inside of one instance to allow for that flexibility all within the application. Okay.
So our next topic is roadblocks, and I think that's something everyone wants to hear about. So Amervis, could you start with that?
I'm strictly going to speak of the roadblocks for MGMRI from the maintenance agreement perspective, not from the professional services perspective, because the two that we felt were noteworthy were, obviously every organization wants to not have their users remember 50 passwords every time they log into every different system and app that they go into. So we were trying to get the Windows integrated system login SSO set up, and we ran into some hurdles there. We were able to overcome that quickly. And then we also ran into some minor challenges with the out-of-the-box reports. We were trying to leverage them as much as possible, and it took a few attempts before we realized at the end of the day that it was all having to do with some time slicing thing that you'll hear about if you are a customer or will be a customer. And so once we got past those two technical issues, we were able to implement, and it was fairly smooth. But those were the two roadblocks relative to some of the other organizations that I've experienced in the past 10 years that we've experienced were minor in comparison.
Excellent. Johanna?
The roadblocks on our side were more outside the tool itself. Heineken is a European company, so we are subject to European law, and particularly European data protection law. And obviously CA is an American company. And there was a conflict with the Patriotic Act, which supersedes which law, and all that kind of things. So we really had to go through due diligence in terms of security and data protection. On the infrastructure side, we had lengthy sessions with CA to really come down to understand the security of the solution to protect our data, not to be subject to be fined by the European law. So the fact that it's a private cloud, the fact that it's you have double authentication. At rest, the data is protected in a vault with double access. Also the fact that the data centers in Europe and the backup center are in Europe, where, check in the box in terms of security. And also obviously CA is one of the best companies in terms of security and all these kinds of software, anti-spyware and all this kind of things. So infrastructure-wise, it was all okay. On the data protection, we had also to do an exercise of classifying our data, because obviously if you're in the cloud and if the Americans decide to ask us data, they potentially could do so. So we had to classify our data and make sure that it's viewed as public, data. We didn't replicate our HR system on a conscious basis to really use data and use PUT data that is relevant for resourcing projects only. So that's our way to really overcome that roadblock in there. But we made it, so there's no issue there. The other one was really the architecture. We had an inherent architecture that didn't enable us to go with our roadmap, and we had to make changes. But that means that the migration was not an as-is migration. It was not it was not the easy way. And we had to make a decision, or we start from scratch, or we make some decisions and have lengthy tests and scenarios and all this kind of thing to make sure we can migrate. We decided for scenario B, we wanted to keep the data we had. It took longer time, but we made it. It was a smooth transition finally, and now we migrated. So,
excellent, Bryan.
Yep. For us, the roadblocks were first and foremost around our inconsistent levels of maturity when it came to our PMOs. Having 7-8 PMOs in existence within the same company, again, without having the governance or the parent architecture of an enterprise PMO, meant that we had to make the application work for each of those PMOs. So we had to configure the application to tailor that need, right? So again, the example I used before of we had some groups that wanted to use financials or resource management and others not, was challenging for us to understand, regardless of whether or not we thought it was the best practice and it should be done. That's not our role inside of our company. It's really understanding the capabilities and functionality of the application and coming alongside our end user base in matching those two things together and illustrating, well, if you really want to do resource management, you've got to be good at schedule management, right? And helping them understand the connections from an application standpoint. So that was a challenge for us because we would have a lot of people that, of course, would say, hey, absolutely, I want that resource management capability. I want to be able to show how well my team is doing. But then we would look at their schedules and they had a little bit of work to do, right? So coming up with a solution for them to put those two things together and give them the output they need was a challenge. We also have a limited number of resources, and you'll see on one of the next slides, I also consider that a benefit. So interesting, it's not a typo there. It's a challenge for us on the resource side because we literally started our implementation with one technical resource to start deploying Clarity alongside with professional services because we were going to be on demand. So we were able to stand it up, but we quickly increased our end user adoption and which enabled us to justify the additional headcount, right? So we incrementally added alongside our growth. So just a good business practice. We had managed growth as we added resources. But starting small, trying to do everything with a couple people certainly was a challenge for us. And then finally, professional services. Professional services was challenging in our particular implementation, primarily because we knew that while the out-of-the-box offering is wonderful, right? We needed to tailor it to meet our end users. And that meant creating a couple of custom attributes, a couple reports that were not out of the box. And so that required us to also take on some of the training responsibility and the architecture responsibility to stay up with the dynamic nature of our company.
Okay. So next we're going to talk about the benefits that each of you realized by going with PPM SaaS, or the SaaS model. So Amervis, could you start?
Well, so the number one benefit that our CFO, I think, would appreciate is reduced costs. We obviously were able to roll everything up, license costs, maintenance costs, and support costs all into one reasonable rate. Then one of the other benefits that firsthand I think were beneficial were whenever we had any upgrades from one version to the other. We started with 12 on demand and we're now on 13.3. They were really seamless compared to a lot of the other upgrades that we've experienced in the past, both at this organization and at others. Really, there wasn't a lot of reports of end users saying, an attribute wasn't where it needed to be or any of that, any of those types of issues. So making sure that the upgrades went smoothly was one of the benefits that CA handled well. Making sure that if they were actually bringing the system down for any kind of maintenance. We got regular routine email notifications that they were actually going to do some maintenance, or we should look at a certain window to notify the end users that they were going to bring the system down to do anything. Service packs, not having to deal with any type of resources to do storage or application operations and uptime. That was all a beautiful thing. And basically, I think that the long-term benefit that we are still experiencing, we're going to experience over our roadmap with regards to having the people, process, and technology roadmap transformed and using the system to actually do governance and improve project performance is also noteworthy, even though it's not up on the slide. So.
Johanna, go ahead.
Our first very tangible benefit was performance. As I mentioned, on the on-premise, we were not scaled. We didn't have an infrastructure fit for purpose, and that was really the first thing we noticed. Particularly in operating companies in countries where network are not good, the SaaS solution really helped us increase the performance in those countries. The other one, obviously, was scalability. We are growing every month, because we're starting our rollouts. We started with Africa, Middle East last week. Next week is other countries in Europe. 2 weeks' time is Asia Pacific. So we can increase the number of users, in our pace without worrying about number of, increasing the servers or whatever. It's scalable. Yeah? We are just at the beginning of our roadmap. July, that's when we migrated. So, I can't say yet all the benefits we can get out of it. In January, we're going to go live with time recording, and we expect a lot from that milestones and how the SaaS solution also is going to enable us with the performance, help us to add functionalities and help us in driving the rollout of Clarity. And the other thing I wanted to say, well, there's also a benefits case financially, actually. As I mentioned, on the on-premise, we anyway had to invest in our servers. We had to spend money, and with the SaaS solution, we have a benefits case. And as Amervis mentioned, it's all one number. It's not hidden costs here and there. It's all clear. So that's a very tangible benefits as well.
Okay, Bryan.
Yeah, so for us, as I mentioned before, being able to have a small team, and that's relative, right? But that for us, that quantifies as 3 people. So we have, for all of Time Warner Cable, I mentioned 50,000 employees. We don't have 50,000 licenses, right? We're working on growing that implementation. But with 1,400 active users and all the differences that we have from a PMO and configuration perspective, 3 of us do soup to nuts everything. And I think that's one of the smaller teams, and based on the other customers that I've talked to. And we're able to do that and maintain that scale only because of the on-demand support that environment that we have. For the same points that Johanna and Amervis have said, right? We don't have to worry about memory and service and performance. We have a number and help desk and contacts to be able to rely upon, and that's really critical for us. The tangible benefit that our customers receive from that is that we can spend more time listening to the business and what are their challenges, what problems are they really trying to solve. And by us being able to be engaged with them, we can go and spend time building more compelling reports or portlets and things that will add value through the solution. So that's significant for us. We can upgrade with much more simplicity than if it were in-house. We've started, as I mentioned, 12.06, but we've done 4 upgrades now over that last 4-year period. And certainly I'll be candid and tell you that 12.06 to 12.1 or 12.1 to 13 was a little more challenging than as we've moved forward. So it's nice for us that we can at least say we're on the right trajectory and getting better from an upgrade perspective. And so we don't have as much concern about trying to upgrade, for example, where we are now to 14.2. So that's good. Out of the box for us, are sticking to an out of the box configuration. I would say for the development work that we've done and the value we provide to our customers through Clarity, we have been, we stretch the boundaries of configuration, but we do not cross that boundary into customization. So again, we don't have a lot of concern on the upgrade side of custom gel scripts or any kind of the complexity that might exist relative to interfaces that would make upgrading more preventative for us. So that's That's important for us. And then finally, one of the things from selfishly from an administrative perspective, or someone managing and overseeing the tool, being able to be on demand and act like an external customer rather than an internal customer to our own IT department I can't emphasize that strongly enough. That's a gigantic benefit for us. Okay, understanding Clarity's Magic Quadrant, CA is supporting that, having those resources, and at the same time understanding that Clarity is not customer facing to our end users. So regardless of how important we think a particular issue is to be addressed from a serviceability perspective, we're never going to be able to compete with our own IT department saying our billing system or provisioning system needs to wait because of a Clarity upgrade. We're always going to be at the bottom of that list. But on-demand affords us the opportunity to flip that paradigm. And CA is responsive because they have to be and they want to be, right, to the needs that we have, and saying, hey, if it's a Sev 1, a Sev 2 type of ticket, we get that action and responsiveness that we need because of that.
Okay. And our final topic, we have just a few minutes left, but it's the results. And this is an opportunity for each of you to really sum up your experience with CPPM SaaS. So Amervis, please.
So leveraging the out-of-the-box reports were definitely something that we got a lot of benefit from and contributed to our results. The fact that we could utilize the missing time and time compliance reports directly out of the box, no customization, and the fact that our project status reporting, we actually use the out of the box as a base to do minor tweaks on those reports to get management and the stakeholders and PMs what they needed. That all increased end user adoption rates, making sure that the versions are now easily scheduled and happen without any hiccups. Those are positive results. And then one of the things that I will say with the caveat of the word relative in front of is that system outages have been rare. And when they do happen, we're right back up within a reasonable amount of time. So those are some of the things that we've experienced and we're content with.
Great. Johanna?
On our side, the migration went very smoothly at the end. So we manage our objective to migrate all our data and our things in there. One of the great results for our side is we really wanted to leverage out of the box and utilize that to leverage on best practices and review our processes. And actually moving to a SaaS solution really helped us fulfill that objective. And I can't emphasize this, with the upgrades, to really stay as much as possible out of the box. Best practice is really, the way forward. It is costly to customize as you want. I'm confident, actually, that the solution we have in place with the architecture, we went to see it because we really wanted to make sure we have an architecture fit for our roadmap, that there are no doors closed to what we want to do. We are clear what we want to achieve by 2017, and it is very important that we have the architecture that enables us to do that. Yeah? And that's why we went to CA directly to do that work, to really draft the correct architecture. And I'm confident that actually we have something that makes sense, that leverage out of the box, and that will enable us to further grow, and ultimately to also start growing maybe in the business as well, and not just stay within global information services. We are set up to anything that will hit us. If tomorrow we have a new department, that's okay. We're set up for it, so we're fine. Yeah.
Good. Bryan?
Yeah. So for Time Warner Cable, we've been able to show year over year increase in user adoption. So one of the great points of having a PPM solution is now we can quantify what we're doing and having those results. And so that's fantastic, right? It's not just we think we're getting better, we can show that we're getting better. We have also been able to do a tool consolidation. Again, we have plenty of additional tools out there, and some people still consider Excel a project management tool, which I have issue with, clearly. But we're consolidating that, and that's important for us. We've been able to have a net reduction in reporting, and from our perspective, that's a positive. That's a good result. We didn't have a standard for reporting, so we created a bunch of reports for each of our individual units. And now that they've seen that the commonality, because we publish it through the same tool, and they can see, hey, 80-90% of our stuff is exactly the same. So I think we can standardize. And so we've been able to take the benefit of clarity and that visibility to have a net reduction in our reports, and so that's good for us. And then finally, just our ability, as we said, to upgrade more easily as iterations come out of clarity. That's been fantastic.
Excellent, thank you. I think we're right on time. Thank you very
2 minutes
much.
to spare.
So, I do want to point out, like I mentioned at the beginning, that we knew we wouldn't have time for Q&A, but all of these speakers will be here on the side to answer your questions in a few minutes. And please do, you can still use the mobile app, send in your questions, and we'll get back to you by email. So thank you again to our speakers. Yep. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you.